we enable liquids in and around the data center in a manner that is exceptionally reliable and exceptionally adaptable, which is why I transitioned careers. A lot of what I was doing became a commodity, and amazingly enough, liquid distribution is one of the emerging dynamics of a data center design and a limiting factor for many data centers. But there's has been a change in philosophy in data center design recently, and people that weren't using liquids are now going back to the future. They're going back to liquids. Today what you're finding is IT has been weaponized. You don't want to be the yellow cab company facing Uber today. Your future is much less entitled than it was 10 years ago. Today you have boardrooms that are meeting in Q1. People are talking about what do we need to do to weaponize our organization to keep from becoming antiquated, to keep competitive. And the answer in many cases is an artificial intelligence application that may require 5 or any number of high density racks of 50 kW each. And plugging those into their typical data center of 8 kW per rack ends up being a challenge that the boardroom doesn't really address. They just basically say, make it happen. When people start deploying AI, artificial intelligence, or machine learning, or deep learning, it benefits from a close-packed CPU cluster that you can't spread across the floor. At this point in time, you have to pack, as closer to the pack you can do, the more effective the calculation. We've been engaged in helping deploy liquids in operating data centers in manners that are exceptionally reliable, very adaptable, and very fast, so you don't affect the mean time to repair or the operational aspect of the data center. You can do that in both the existing data centers. You can also make it part of your planning. And the difference when you make it part of a planning, I talked to a customer, a major data center customer, and they told us that one of their customers asked to plug in a liquid loop. And to plug in a liquid loop in their data center design would have cost $270,000. It could have easily been done for around $10,000 if they had done a little bit of preventive planning and made some provisions for adding a loop someday in the future. I went to Data Center Dynamics in Stockholm, and we looked at the energy reuse equation. And in the Nordic countries, you find that data centers, the waste heat for data centers, is powering or is providing the heat for municipal heat for villages and towns. That business model is practical basically in the Nordics. It doesn't play too well in the United States. And generally speaking, larger data centers, you can't take 30 megawatts of heat and find a place to put it. But there's a company called Cloud and Heat in Germany, and they are taking smaller data centers. We'll call it these edge-sized data centers, somewhere in a couple hundred kW, and they are making those part of a building infrastructure and using the data center as a preheater for the hot water system or any fluid system that needs to have preheat in a building. The current IT energy usage each year is around 416 terawatt hours per year. That's a lot of heat. If you get a little bit efficient, you might be able to drive it down a little bit, but it's growing. So the efficiency is just going to taper the growth rate. But what if, as we deploy this massive infrastructure that's predicted of edge, we find ways to productively use the heat? As a society, we look at it, and the first efforts will probably have a hard time being financially viable because people will have to think different, and different requires different designs and a little bit more work. But just like the solar industry, a couple of years back, people gave it some government incentives, and now solar is a self-funded, in essence, the benefits of solar energy are propagating on their own. They don't necessarily need any more incentives to make them continue to grow, and they're taking off. We talk to engineers though, and we also solve issues like vibration, expansion, contraction, alignment, seismic, any number of issues. But in a summary, we enable liquids in and around the data center, and that includes beverages afterwards, so can I buy you a beer?